Hello everyone, I'm Kavilan Tiago from TESL A batch PISMP 2023-2028. Today I'm going to present about context of English language used in Malaysia primary classroom. So, before we get along further, let's look at the difference between context and content.
Context or content? What's the difference? Context refers to the situation or environment that something happens in and gives meaning to it. Whereas content refers to the actual information, ideas, or things contained within a conversation, a book, or a website. So context means situation and content means information. For example, if a politician says it's time for change, the meaning of this phrase depends on the context. If this country has been having economic difficulties, then we can know based on this context that the politician is referring to change regarding economic and job stability. But if that same country is experiencing environmental disasters, then maybe the politician is referring to environmental change. So depending on the political context, we can better understand the actual content or the information or what was said.
So, basically, context refers to the circumstances surrounding language that shape its meaning. It includes all the factors that influence how a message is created, interpreted, and understood. Context can affect the meaning of words, tone, and the overall interaction between people. It provides background information that helps clarify meaning and ensures that communication is appropriate and effective. So there are different types of context such as situational context, cultural context, and lastly interpersonal context. In essence, context shapes how language is used and understood, ensuring that communication is meaningful and appropriate in any given situation. So, out of the three types of context, today we are going to focus on two contexts only, which are situational context and cultural context. So, what is a situational context? Let's look at the definition. Specific circumstances or setting in which an event occurs, including the physical environment, the people involved, their roles, and the social and cultural norms that influence behavior. It helps to understand why people act the way they do in a given situation by considering all the external factors that might be affecting their actions and decisions. For example, the way someone speaks in a formal classroom setting may be different from how they speak at a casual gathering with friends, even if the topic is similar. Situational context determines the appropriateness of language, tone, formality, and even nonverbal cues like body language or facial expressions. So, let's look into the key aspects of situational context in Malaysian primary school classroom. First of all, we have physical environment. The layout of desks, seating arrangements, and availability of learning materials influence how students interact and exchange with the lesson. For example, group seating promotes collaboration while traditional roles encourage focus on the teacher. So for the second one, time of day and class schedule. Student energy level and focus can be different depending on weather, the class is held in the morning or afternoon. For example, morning classes may see students more alert and engaged, while afternoon classes might require more dynamic teaching strategies to maintain focus. So, because in the afternoon, the students will easily get tired and bored to study, so the teachers might have to come up with a fun learning or fun strategies to teach the students. So the third one is social dynamics and relationships. The nature of the relationship between teachers and students influences how students engage with the material and each other. A supportive teacher-student dynamic fosters an open, respectful environment where students feel encouraged to ask questions and participate. The teacher's ability to manage behavior, set expectations, and maintain discipline is critical for creating a positive situational context. Clear rules and a respectful atmosphere help students stay focused and motivated. So for the last aspect is classroom activities and tasks. So the situational context changes depending on whether the lesson is a lecture, group activity, hands-on experiment or discussion. Group activities encourage interaction while individual tasks foster independent learning. So here are some examples on how the teachers teaching the students using fun elements.
Lucah tu maksudnya adalah pegang bahagian-bahagian sensitif pada diri seseorang individu. Contohnya, apa bahagian sensitif? Kalau pada gambar ni mana sensitif? Mulut sensitif. Kokok dia nak cium-cium kita. Mana boleh? Kalau ada orang nak cium-cium cikgu pun, mana boleh? Tak boleh, tak boleh, tak boleh. Geli tak boleh. Okey, sensitif di mulut. Lagi di mana? Mata tak sensitif lah. Okey, kat mana? Ni kat sini ni ha. Kat sini, mana ni? Dada sensitif. Mana boleh pegang-pegang dada kita? Kita akan kata, ya, boleh ni. Ya, boleh tu. Mana boleh pegang-pegang dada? Betul? Dada tak boleh. Lagi satu pegang bahagian depan. Yang kita punya alat sulit. Boleh tak? Tak boleh. Tak boleh. Tak boleh. Okay, so you can have a more.
Guess the country by emoji. What? There's no Finland. Next one. As we've played this before, right? Oh, pot you girl.
So here another example on the differences between how a student talk to his friend and to his mom. Here's an example showing how the situational context talking to a friend versus talking to a parent changes the language a student uses. The first one is student talking to his friend. informal or casual context. A student would typically use informal language including slang, casual tone, and shortened words. For example, student, hey, have you done that work? I'm really too lazy to do it. Or in Malay, eh, kau dah buat ke kerja sekolah tu? Aku malas betul lah buat. The second one is student talking to his mom, formal or respectful context. A student would use more formal language, show respect, and possibly use titles or polite phrases when speaking to a parent. For example, Mom, I have done my homework, but there's this one question I don't understand. Can you help me? Or in Malay, Ibu, saya dah buat kerja sekolah tapi ada soalan ni saya tak faham. Boleh tolong ajar saya? In this context, the student uses polite pronouns like I and addresses the mother as mom, which shows the respect. The tone is more formal with polite requests such as can you help me? This example shows how the situational context, talking to a friend versus talking to a parent, directly influences the student's language choice, tone, and level of formality. Let's move on to the next context, which is cultural context. Cultural context refers to the environment or situation that is relevant to the beliefs, values, and practices of the culture in which a person is raised or operates. It encompasses the shared knowledge, norms, and values of a community, influencing how individuals perceive and interact with the world around them. For example, in high context culture like those in Asia or South America, communication often relies heavily on nonverbal cues and the context of the conversation, whereas in low context cultures like those in North America or Northern Europe, communication tends to be more direct and implicate. Understanding cultural context is crucial for effective communication as it helps in interpreting messages accurately and avoiding misunderstandings. So let's look into the key aspects of cultural context in Malaysian primary school. So there are four key aspects which are multicultural education, language policies, intercultural activities, and curriculum integration. So multicultural education. Malaysian classrooms are inherently multicultural, reflecting the country's ethnic diversity including Malay, Chinese, Indian, and indigenous groups, which are Kadazan, Iban, and Morovo. This diversity is embraced through multicultural education, which aims to foster understanding and respect among students of different backgrounds. Language policies. The medium of instruction in Malaysian primary schools is primarily Bahasa Malaysia, but English also taught as a second language. Additionally, vernacular schools use Mandarin or Tamil as the medium of instruction, reflecting the linguistic diversity of the student population. So the third one is intercultural activities. Schools often organize cultural events and activities that celebrate various festivals like Deepavali, Hari Raya, Chinese New Year, and traditions. These activities help students appreciate and understand the cultural practices of their peers. So the last one is curriculum integration. The curriculum includes subjects like moral education and civic and citizenship education, which are designed to instill values of tolerance, respect, and national unity. These subjects encourage students to think critically about social issues and their roles as responsible citizens. In conclusion, these key aspects of multicultural education, language policies, intercultural activities, and curriculum integration help create an inclusive and harmonious learning environment in Malaysian primary schools. They are critical in promoting understanding, tolerance, and national unity in a culturally diverse society. So, here are some examples of cultural context. The first example is a teacher is using Malay in English class to teach the students.
Teaching my students in Malay.
Semua dengar elok-elok. Boleh tak? Boleh. Semua murid ni faham apa yang I cakap? Kita faham? Faham. Ini Malaysia lah. Hari ni kita belajar apa? Pasal apa? Bukan. Ya? Bukan pasal malam. Di dalam Malaysia kita ada bangsa apa? India. Orang Kedah bukan bangsa. Iban, correct. Bangsa Katazan. BMI okay tak? Okay tak? Okay sikit je. Okay sikit je. Wait, cikgu. Terima kasih. Next class, kita belajar dalam bahasa Melayu boleh tak? Kenapa? Kita tak faham.
Here, another example of cultural context, which is a cultural exchange, where a Japanese group of students came to Malaysia to see how Malaysia schools are works.
Stay with me. 真夜中のドアを叩き帰らないでと泣いたあの季節が今目の前 Stay with me 口癖を言いながら二人の時を過ぎてまだ忘れず大事にしていた恋と愛とは違うものだよと
So, we already looked into what is situational context and what is cultural context, and also the key aspects of both contexts. So now let's look into the importance of situational context and cultural context in language use. First and foremost, let's look into the importance of situational context in language use. So the first point is clarity and relevance. The situational context helps speakers tailor their language to be clear and relevant to the specific circumstances. For example, the way a teacher explains a concept in a classroom differs from how they might explain it in a casual conversation. So the second one is purpose and audience. Understanding the purpose of the communication and the audience helps in choosing the right words and structure. For instance, a speech at a formal event will differ greatly from a chat with her friends. So the last point is influencers communication style. Different situations require different communication styles. In a classroom, structured communication is common while in a casual settings, informal language and slang might be more appropriate. Situational context helps speakers choose the right style for the occasion. So, for example, in a Malaysian primary school, students are expected to speak more formal to teachers using phrases like "Cikgu, boleh saya tanya soalan?" or in English, "Teacher, may I ask a question?" However, in a casual interaction with their peers, they might say, "Hey, I want to ask something." Or in Malay, nak tanya sikit boleh? Okay, now let's look into the importance of cultural context in language use. So the first one is shapes meaning and interpretation. Cultural context affects how certain words, phrases, or idioms are understood. Expressions that are appropriate in one culture may be misunderstood or even offensive in another. For example, in some cultures, direct eye contact is seen as a sign of respect, while in others it may be considered confrontational. So the second is preserves cultural identity. Language is closely tied to cultural identity. Cultural context ensures that language use reflects the values and traditions of a community, helping to preserve and transmit cultural knowledge. For example, the celebration of festivals like Hari Raya, Chinese New Year, or Deepavali in Malaysian schools involves teaching students culturally relevant greetings, expressions, and traditions. So, for more example, in a multicultural Malaysian classroom, a teacher might greet a student in multiple language, saying good morning in English, selamat pagi in Malay, zao an in Mandarin, and vanakkam in Tamil, reflecting the cultural diversity of the class and showing respect for each community's linguistic traditions. So that's all for the importance of situational and cultural context in language use. So, why both contexts matter in language use? First and foremost, ensures effective communication. Both situational and cultural context provides the necessary background for interpreting meaning correctly. Without understanding this context, even grammatically correct sentences may lead to misunderstandings or awkward interactions. Secondly, improves interpersonal relationships. When speakers adjust their language use to fit the situational and cultural context, they foster better relationships by showing respect, empathy, and understanding. This is especially important in multilingual, multicultural settings like Malaysia, where different language and cultural norms coexist. Lastly, promotes social integration in diverse environments, recognizing and adapting to cultural contexts promotes social cohesion and prevents cultural biases or conflicts. In Malaysian classrooms, teachers and students are encouraged to appreciate and adapt to the cultural context of others, fostering unity and diversity. So that's all for my presentation. I hope you liked the video and gained some knowledge. Thank you.